Klor Nilfgaard, Haupte Moritz med sine rapporten. Welcome to another video about armors. Today, helmets. Helmet is the most important piece of armor and probably the first piece of protective gear that a soldier will get. In a history there were periods when helmets weren't in use. Maybe it was because of the different combat style, so they were not that useful, or sometimes they weren't protective enough, so it wasn't worth it. Great example is the introduction of firearms. From the beginning, the helmets were resistant and they adjusted the shape. The great example is Moritz, the helmet from 30 Years' War. But later on, when the firearms became more effective, the helmets practically disappeared and they were introduced again in the beginning of the First World War, but mainly as a protection from shrapnels. They were a bit resistant to the bullets, but not so much. The real comeback for them was with the invention of Kevlar, great material which is still in use today. In total, helmets were used anytime when you expect the contact in a fight. In a project The Witcher from the Netflix, we already saw two types of helmets. And as we said in a react video to the armors, the overall shape was actually better in the first season. We are not talking about the surface, that was better in the second season, but the shape of the helmets in second season is kind of weird. We had a question in the comments about exactly how. Well, at first it doesn't really fit together for me personally visually, but that's personal preference. But one of the main problems is that the helmet seems a little bit too tight fitted, so they are directly connected with your head. And if you receive a blow, as we talked about shockwaves and that stuff, you will receive the full force and full energy into your head. So that might create a serious problem. And then not only visually for me, but also from the practical point of view, is the face guard, the visor. It's really tightly fitted to the face and with only few tiny holes for breathing, so it will definitely restrict your breath capacity, so you will get exhausted sooner in a combat. And there seems no easy way to lift the visor. It's a really important function in the helmets. You need to be able to lift it so you can get more oxygen. Only exception are the tournament helmets, but they are specialized for the turning. Those helmets are definitely meant for a battlefield. We must appreciate that unless in some other TV shows or movies, in a Netflix Witcher series, most of the soldiers and some characters actually wear helmets and they use them. So we are definitely grateful for that. About the exact design, in that case, our opinion is not that positive, but we won't talk about it in more details because it wouldn't move us forward. Write us in the comments if you would be interested in more detailed analysis of Netflix armors of any fraction. Now we'll focus on what types of helmets we use and why. The helmets of Nazare Brigade, about this project we already made a short intro, are mainly inspired by game visuals of CD Projekt Red. Their game visuals were inspired by real historical pieces, for example, for Nilfgaard mainly by Italian salads, so there was no need for us to do any major changes. For example, with pauldrons we made some, but more about that in another video. We rather made a little bit wider scale of shapes than it's presented in the game, but the basic is practically the same. They are made of steel. Some of them are quenched, but it's not necessary. And they are made to measure for every single soldier. So you can choose exact design or shape to your likings. It also could reflect your role and rank. The blackening of the surface corresponds with the book's description. That's probably from which the name of Black Infantry came from. And furthermore, it gives at least some protection against rusting, so pretty useful. It is widely mentioned that the helmets of Nilfgaardian army are winged. So it's a typical element and we wanted to preserve that. Of course, we also definitely realized that they would be pretty impractical in combat. So with our armor makers, we invented attachable wings. Just like that. So how it works, there are those small sockets on the helms and the wings just fit in. The wings belongs to the ceremonial occasions, so the soldiers wear them on parades or as a guard of honor. The officers who usually don't expect direct combat wears them more often, so they could be easily recognized from afar. Another reason, except for impracticality in combat, is the weight. The wings are quite heavy, and if it's not necessary, you don't want to carry any extra weight, especially in combat. So the attachable wings prove to be the best solution. Again, we stay on fundamental model of balance between weight, protection and mobility. And combination of those aspects creates the practicality. The first wings for our helmet were created by armor Toradim, and the exact design it's his creation. So the look of the wings for our unit is absolutely original. We also created little different styles. The small details in an exact design could show a little bit of individuality of a soldier. We also thought about the different materials, so we use brass or classic blackened steel or iron. One of the ideas was that you also can show by color of your wings and maybe the style your rank and role in our unit. For medium infantry you will use the blackened wings, and for heavy infantry or for higher ranking officers you will use brass wings. And for light infantry or maybe for sappers you just create the helmet without any wings or without many attachments. Another important part of the helmet is the inner padding. As we already mentioned, you must think of shockwaves. Even if the weapon doesn't penetrate the armor, the shockwaves will still hit the body. That's why the armor is angled, so the hits will slide off and won't hand the full impact of the blow. And that's why you wear soft layers underneath the armor. At first, it's more comfortable, and secondly, it's another layer of protection. If you wear metal helmet directly on your skull, well, for example, the sword blade, it won't penetrate, but it can deliver such energy that it will stun you or even kill you. As a craftsman, I'm mainly focused on tailoring, so making the helmets or any other armor I will leave to experts. But except making clothing, I am also making the under-armor garments, so that includes the helmet's padding. Also, we want to mention our armorers who created those beautiful helmets. As well as with every craft, with arm making, you really need expertise and knowledge, especially the knowledge how armor worked in history and how it was worn. That's why we were able together create those beautiful pieces. On one hand, they need to be functional, the final product needs to be functional, and the other, they need to be aesthetical and rightly stylized for us. And again, we are inspired by book descriptions and also the game visuals, and we trying to bring them in reality. Not every line or proportion looks great in reality, but there is a history and its sense of beauty, and it is a great advisor. Currently we have two main armors, one El Tientano, the Elven blacksmith, with the author of sockets for attachable wings, and thanks to his great artistic sense, he had a huge influence on design and proportions of our armors. The next one is Jaroslav Rabel, who already made for us some beautiful helmets, and we are working with him on some future projects. Author of some first pieces of armors dedicated directly for Nilfgaard is Petr Izba, and his huge experience with reenacting was really useful for us in creating those functional armors. We should also mention Toradim, Holemi, and many other people who helped us with our gear. We could never create this project without those talented craftsmen. So gentlemen, thank you. Hope you find this video interesting. Give us a like. If you have more questions about helmets, leave us a comment. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Glor Nilfgaard.